Right now, while most headlines around the world are focused on the growing tensions surrounding Iran, there is another country quietly watching every development extremely carefully: China. Because for Beijing, the Iran crisis is not just another geopolitical story. It is something that could directly affect the energy supply, economic stability, and global trade routes that power the Chinese economy. And the reason for that begins with one simple reality. China is the largest oil importing country in the world. Every single day, the Chinese economy consumes enormous amounts of energy to power factories, cargo ships, trucks, airplanes, and one of the largest industrial systems ever built. But China cannot produce enough oil domestically to meet that demand, so it imports huge quantities of oil from overseas. And a large portion of that oil comes from one specific region of the world: the Middle East. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates supply massive volumes of energy that travel across oceans to reach Asian markets. But there is one critical choke point in that entire system: the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway sits between Iran and Oman and connects the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. At its narrowest point, the distance between the two shores is only about 33 kilometers. Yet through this small passage flows roughly 20 million barrels of oil every single day. That represents nearly 20% of the world's oil supply. To understand the scale of that number, imagine if 1 out of every 5 energy shipments in the entire world depended on a single narrow route. That's exactly what the Strait of Hormuz represents. And for China, this waterway is especially important. A large percentage of the oil China imports must pass through this corridor before reaching Chinese ports. If that route were disrupted, even briefly, the impact could spread quickly across energy markets. Oil prices could surge, shipping costs could rise, and the Chinese economy would face higher energy costs almost immediately. But that is only one layer of the story. China also has a very specific relationship with Iran itself. Despite international sanctions and political tensions between Iran and Western countries, China has maintained strong economic ties with Tehran. In fact, China has become one of the largest buyers of Iranian oil. For Iran, this relationship provides an important economic lifeline. And for China, it offers access to energy supplies that can sometimes be purchased at discounted prices due to sanctions. However, this relationship also creates risk. If conflict escalates in the region and Iranian oil exports are disrupted, China could lose a significant portion of those supplies, and replacing that energy quickly would not be easy. Because global oil markets are extremely sensitive to sudden supply shocks, history has shown that when major oil supply routes are threatened, prices can rise very quickly. Higher oil prices then spread through the entire global economy. Transportation becomes more expensive, manufacturing costs increase, shipping prices rise, and consumer goods eventually become more expensive. Since China is the world's largest manufacturing center, rising production costs inside China could ripple through global supply chains. Products produced in Chinese factories might become more expensive. Companies around the world might face higher costs. And inflation could increase in multiple economies. But the Iran crisis also connects to something even bigger for China: global influence. Over the past 2 decades, China has steadily increased its economic presence across the Middle East. Chinese companies have invested heavily in energy projects, ports, railways, and infrastructure throughout the region. Many of these investments are part of China's massive international development strategy known as the Belt and Road Initiative. This initiative aims to create a vast network of trade routes connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa, and the Middle East plays a crucial role in that network. Iran itself sits at a strategic crossroads connecting Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Because of its geographic location, Iran could serve as a major hub for trade routes, linking Asia to Western markets. China and Iran have already signed long-term agreements involving infrastructure, transportation, and energy development. But geopolitical instability in the region threatens these plans. If conflicts escalate, shipping lanes could become dangerous. Energy infrastructure could be damaged, and trade routes connecting Asia and Europe could face disruption. For Beijing, that would represent a major strategic setback. That is why Chinese officials often emphasize the importance of regional stability and diplomatic solutions when discussing tensions in the Middle East. From China's perspective, stability in the Persian Gulf is essential, not just for energy security, but also for global trade. Because the modern global economy depends heavily on interconnected supply chains, a disruption in one region can quickly affect industries and markets across the world. And when energy markets are involved, the impact can be even greater. This is why analysts say the Iran crisis is not just about Iran. It is about the global economic system that depends on stable energy supplies and safe trade routes. And for China, that system is absolutely critical, because China's economic growth depends heavily on manufacturing, exports, and access to global markets. So while the world watches the immediate political developments surrounding Iran, Beijing is watching something else: the long-term consequences, the effect on oil markets, the security of global shipping routes, and the stability of trade networks that connect Asia to the rest of the world. Because sometimes the most important geopolitical events are not defined only by military action. They are defined by how they reshape the economic foundations of the global system. And that is exactly why China is watching the Iran crisis so carefully.